We're live at 6:55. I'm here a little bit early. Today or tonight, because it's nighttime here, I want to talk about air-to-air intercoolers. And I have, excuse me, I have videos up on comparing air-to-air and air-to-water. And we've been all down that road. Which one works better? Which one, makes it colder? Which one has better recovery? There's all sorts of things that, people can argue about. This isn't about that. This is about some major flack that I got years and years ago, decades ago now, about air-to-air intercooling, about the way that I was testing them. In fact, if you look at the thumbnail that I have up right now, what is one of the things you should see in that thumbnail that people could complain about because it was done on purpose for this lead photo? Because this was a lead photo that I used in one of the stories. And the thing is, if you notice that, and so to backtrack a little bit, when you're running a motor on the dyno, there's lots of airflow through the dyno cell, particularly at Westech. They have a big extraction fan. They have two entries, one on either side in front of the motor. So there's lots of airflow. In fact, if you open a door while that fan is going and let it go, it'll slam the door and almost pull the door off of its hinges. So there's a lot going on in there. Even still, is that the same as getting airflow going through the core? So like if we look at an ideal situation, let's say we've got a Camaro or a Corvette or Challenger, whatever it is, we've got a big front mounted air to air. Maybe we've got an RB26 Skyline or something. We've got a big front mount on it. And we're driving through, down the road. And we're going 100 miles an hour. We got a, big opening there and lots of airflow through there. And hopefully we're not restricting it on the backside. That air is actually going through there and everything's working perfect. We all know that air-to-air intercoolers are not always provided airflow like that. When you leave from the start, there's no airflow. Maybe if you had fans on it, and maybe if you have a fan behind the radiator and it's drawing from the radiator through the air-to-air intercooler and not bleeding around it, there's not much airflow when you're stationary. When you get going, the faster that you go, the more airflow you get. That stands to reason. That's pretty normal. So the question then becomes, at least the question became back then when I was getting all of this information supplied to me, that when I'm testing these things on the dyno, on the engine dyno, stationary engine dyno, and really on a chassis dyno too, unless you find a way to get tremendous airflow going to it, you can never duplicate what's happening with a car out on the road. Now, obviously, to find out what that actually is, you'd have to measure it somehow, maybe put a box around it and a flow meter and figure out how much airflow it's actually getting, on the exit side or something, and find out what's actually going on. And really what you'd need to do, the easy way to do it would not be to measure the airflow going across the intercooler, because that would be difficult. But just measure the temperature coming out of the intercooler. Measure the boost going in, the temperature of the boost going in, and the airflow coming out. Then you'd have an idea how well the intercooler is working. And then if you run it on the engine dyno, you just duplicate that. So the problem is when a vehicle is not stationary, when it's in motion, that sort of efficiency thing might change. More airflow through. Maybe it gets. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you think it is more efficient as we go faster? If we're able to somehow keep this thing under the same amount of boost and the same amount of load, and let's say we got 15 pounds, and then we were able to accelerate it from 50 miles an hour up to 150 miles an hour and stay at that same boost level, would we get a lower charge temperature at 150 than we got at 50 because we got more airflow through the air-to-air intercooler? We're still assuming ambient air for all of this is being used for the cooling, for the transfer medium. So would we get a change? Like if we got more airflow, is it going to change? The other question on air-to-air intercoolers is on a one-pass deal, is it doing what it's supposed to be doing anyway? And then the airflow that we get through it really just makes it so we can keep doing that or do that again? Is it just a recovery system? So have we used the airflow to just shed the heat that the turbo put in when we were under boost? Because we're not under boost let's face it, unless you're doing a road course or something like that, even at a drag strip, you're like, wow, 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 and all the gears, and then it's over. And then when you're driving on the street, you may go through a gear or two or whatever when you're on the street and you're doing boost and it feels good. But then you're just cruising around. Then it's just airflow and no hot air going through it. So is that just a recovery rate thing? Here was the issue that people had when I was running air-to-air intercoolers in the dyno cell with, let's say, to start out with, just the airflow that's in the cell that's inherent in the way that the thing extracts exhaust out and gets airflow in so the motor can breathe. The complaint was that you're not simulating the airflow through the intercooler, the air-to-air intercooler. Therefore, your air-to-air intercooler test is invalid. Now, as you might imagine, this came from a company that has air-to-air intercoolers, that uses air-to-air intercoolers in their products. So they wanted, obviously, the air-to-air intercooler to show the best of any sort of intercooler ever designed by man. So their recommend. I'm like, okay, well, look, I'm willing to talk to you about it. I know the way that we have it set up there with the and we would when we would make a run on the engine dyno with an air-to-air intercooler, if we didn't have the elaborate setup that I'm about to describe, we would make a run and then we would allow it to recover and cool off with airflow going through it, and then make another run. So it would at least be as good as it is when you're making a run down the drag strip with the intercooler positioned right next to a very hot radiator that might be 190 degrees or something. So it would at least be that good. And I said, okay, but I'm willing to listen. You want more airflow? And they're like, yeah, but there's no way that you can't create enough airflow to simulate what happens at 100 miles an hour, 120 miles an hour, 150 miles an hour, 200 miles an hour, whatever, pick your number, whatever it is. I'm like, no, we can't. I said, because in order to do that, I mean, I'm not a scientist, but in order to drive a fan that we could use to get that sort of airflow, and we could build a shroud and everything and do all that, that's not a problem. I said, you're going to need this mega gigawatt electric motor or a gas motor. You're going to have to have like an ATV motor in there or something to be able to drive a fan to do that. They're like, yeah, you need to do that. I'm like, no, I don't. That's silly. First of all, having a gas engine inside the dyno is not a smart idea, other than the one that we're running on the dyno to test. But having another one is not a good idea. And having another one to drive a fan so we can simulate some theoretical airflow that only happens at the very top of some run, I said, is nonsense. I said, anybody that's a real drag racer that's using an air-to-air intercooler has data on this. They know what the temperature is coming out of the core at 20 pounds, 25 pounds, whatever the number is. Quite honestly, if you're running 25 pounds and you're doing drag racing, you should have an air to water with ice water in it anyways. But if you have an air to air, that's fine. And they're like, no, that doesn't work. I said, look, here's what we can do. We can get one or two of these big squirrel cage fans, and then I can make cardboard ducting, and we can duct air directly to that. I said, that's at least as much or more airflow than you get in a vehicle, other than when we're going very, very fast. I said, so it's doing what it's supposed to do, and we're letting it cool in between runs so that the thing is cold when we make the run. I said, so it's starting off at a better temperature anyway when we do the thing. But they're like, oh, no, you're not doing it right. So those are the sorts of comments and constructive criticism I would get. And looking at the data of the amount of temperature drop that we're getting across the core and the amount of pressure that we're getting across the core, quite honestly, having the fan on, if we start from nothing, if we start from a cold intercooler and make the run, the change that we get in charge temperature is just minimal. It's not. I could see if we stayed in it for a really long time that we would start to heat up, or if we ran it once and then ran it really quick again, I could see why that would be a problem, because we haven't shed all of that heat that was imparted by the hot, charge temperature under boost, where we might have 200 or 300 degree air coming out of the turbos, depending on the boost, going into this intercooler. And when the intercooler is hot, what people don't realize is that's good. It's doing its job. It's taking the heat. It's actually taking the heat out of the hot air that we just compressed with the turbochargers, or turbocharger, a single one, and it's shedding it to the atmosphere. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be hot in that condition. And then we're supposed to, using water or air, some kind of transfer medium, help it shed all of that heat that it's radiating out. Now we got to get rid of it on the outside. But those are some of the hurdles that we have to overcome. And in the photo that I put up, the thumbnail photo, you guys can take a look at it if you haven't, or go back and look at it maybe after the live feed's over. And so people know, for people that are just tuning in or coming to the live feed, on these live feeds, what this is we talk about some subject. In this case, we're talking about intercoolers, air-to-air intercoolers, for 10 or 15 minutes, and then it's a question and answer period. So if you're looking for it to be a whole 1 hour video about something where we do lots of dyno testing and all that, it's not that. None of these live feeds are like that, so that you know. So that in the future, you know what you're looking at and you know what you're getting into. Lots of people want to come here, answer questions, hang out, talk smack, tell Richard he doesn't know what he's talking about. All of that. All of that's good. All of that's welcome. But in the photo, one of the things that I did for the photo, I did it, just as my way of saying, I put a fan that's just like it's the equivalent of a desk fan or a room fan that you would put on. It's like that right there. That's basically what it is. I put that in front of the intercooler, and then I sent them a picture of it. I said, "Here, is this enough fan?" And they lost their mind actually and said, "This is not right." Blah 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 blah. I said, "Look, trust me, dude, bro. I see. I got you covered. I got you. I trust me. This is right. What I'm doing is right. I got a good handle on this, and it's all going to work out just fine." So, but the important thing is air-to-air intercooler. Make it big. See what will fit there. Don't restrict the airflow too much and have the car overheat because no air is getting to the radiator. Make it flow enough, and then you balance out I need it to flow enough. I also need to transfer heat enough. Sometimes those things are at odds. All of that worked, and quite honestly, if you look at an Evo or a WRX or even a Civic or something like that, and it's got a big front mount on it, you're like, oh yeah, I already like what I see. That's kind of awesome. Let's see what you guys got going on. Eric, William, Cyrus, G-Dub Deuce, Kevin. I've always wondered if fans on the intercooler would be able to make a measurable difference. If you got the thing hot and it's stationary and you had fans on it, that would help. That would help the recovery rate. So then you could, from a start, you could go again. If you're driving, which is normally the case, and you get off the throttle and there's no more boost and there's no more temperature, the driving and the airflow tend to shed all the heat off of the intercooler that it's radiating outward. And so that's kind of taken care of itself. But they can be beneficial, just like a fan for a radiator. When the car's stationary, maybe under load, maybe not, maybe idling or whatever, but anyway, it's generating heat. And so you have to you have to help the radiator do its job by shedding that heat. And fans work well to do that in traffic and stuff. Have you tried the Treadstone 1245R? Worry about mounting my TrueCool 40K trans cooler behind it and the airflow. It's hard to get a giant, rolling heat exchanger and to have all of it make sure that you get airflow. Sometimes stacking them can be problematic. Normally you would put the smaller one in front of the bigger one. So where do you have your trans cooler? Sometimes they mount the trans coolers obviously in the radiator. That's pretty common, or off to the side of the radiator so that they have like the radiator core support, and then the opening in that has radiator, and then there's another section where they could put other coolers like a power steering cooler, a transmission cooler, those kinds of, an oil cooler, all of those things. You can measure airflow by water temperature. Does the engine run cooler at 100 miles an hour than it does at 10 miles an hour? Are you talking about the airflow through the radiator? Because that would be more of an effect than any sort of air-to-air intercooler in front of there. It's mind-blowing how much heat is pulled out through the intercooler in the milliseconds that it has to go through. They are very efficient. That's what I said. When you feel, if you run a motor under boost and you feel the intercooler and it's very hot, that's because it's doing exactly what you're saying. It's working really good. All of that heat that now is going outside the intercooler is no longer in the charge temperature. It's extracted that out, which is good. I used to exit at every highway exit, then jump back on the freeway, just go through the gears, often staying with traffic. So you just play the on and off game? Hello, baby. Hello. Hello. What are you doing, huh? What do you have water on your nose, huh? Did you just get a drink? Hello. Hey, no, you just want to be on camera. Oh, you do. Where's your brother? Huh? Where's your brother? Well, get up here then. Hello. Say hello to everybody. Who's that? Who's that? Say hi. Say hi. Okay, go get your brother. Go get your brother. Okay. Using LS engine to drive the fan. Yeah, all of that was discussed. Ralph, cold air going slower will cool better than hot air going fast. Bobby, happy to help. One big rolling heat exchanger. That's what, if you look at the trucks, like full-size trucks, particularly turbo diesels, they are one gigantic, because they have heat exchangers for everything. Something I'm currently going back and forth with. Richard, would you replace your clutch fan on your daily work tow to an electric fan? It's like a 20 horsepower gain. When I went to last year's MPMC, I spoke to two people that I wanted to do that test with. One was the guys at Mazir, who I love. Don's awesome. So shout out to the Mazir guys. And while I'm doing it, shout out to the AFR guys and Scat and Vortec and Brian Tooley Racing. I talked to Don and said, I want to put an electric water pump on my truck. And I also spoke to the Flexolite guys because I wanted to do exactly what you're saying. I have an electric fan set up to replace the clutch fan. I don't think that it's as good an idea, but I do think we'll see a change in fuel mileage from doing it. I don't know that it would be able to do what the engine-driven fan does, because I don't think it has that much power. Because if you look at that 20 horsepower to drive that clutched fan, and it's, you know, it's thermostatically controlled in a way. But the fact that it takes that much power to drive that means that it has some serious airflow. And so I don't know that the electric fans would be able to do that, but I also don't know that I need everything that that fan is doing while I'm driving. Because when you really mostly need the fans under high heat and high load stuff. So, and low vehicle speed. So driving around town, maybe more so. And then obviously if the, you know, I think the one I have is a 2-fan system. So I'd have them both on all the time because we're running the AC, especially during the winter or during the summer all the time. So I'm just hoping that it's enough in the times when we need it a lot. And then where I would be worried about it, I don't do a lot of this, but I do some of it, is in towing. I don't know if it's going to be enough, because you don't want to be up going through mountain grades and have the thing overheat. Because the one thing I like about this truck, even though it has 350,000 miles on it, is it never gets hot. I mean, it just goes up to whatever the thermostat is and just stays there. Eric, you're going on an update. Ralph, did you just challenge somebody? Is it a dance challenge? Is it a break off? Did somebody just get served? If the radiator cools more at speed, then chances are the intercooler is too small or big. I mean, rather than extrapolate from the direction that you're going, you just measure the temperature in and out of the intercooler core. That's the easiest way to determine the actual numbers, and then you just, while you're on the street or at a track or whatever kind of thing you're trying to simulate, find out what the discharge temperature going in and out are, and then simulate that on the dyno. That's the easiest way to do it. Because it might not be that you have to duplicate the airflow. We might be able to put misters on it. You know, there might be other ways to make that happen. Might have to drive my truck for a bit, so IMs will reset to get it ready. Other than that, the combo is very healthy. 5.7 iron, 26 to 2800 stall, 323s, standard diff. Nice. So if you had a 5.3 in there, I don't remember if you had a 4.8 in there. If you had a 4.8 and now you have a 5.7, that's going to be a big jump. Even if you had a 5.3 and now you have a 5.7, it should feel a lot torqueier, and it should feel a lot better if you just put that stall converter in there. That should feel really good. Still trying to figure out how to email the snake picture to you. Just send it to my email address. Is it that shouldn't be too hard, right? I'll put it down at the bottom. People that are interested in cams, please send me an email. I put my email down there because I still have cams available. One thing that's run out are shirts. all of the wrong cam shirts. The only sizes I have left now are 3X. I've got some red 3X and I've got some blue 3X. That's it. And so apparently I need to do another order, which is fantastic. I appreciate your guys' support. 18 wheelers running full boost all day are the perfect example. 1-inch thick core, barn door size areas. Yeah, they got a lot of frontal going on there. Baby got front. Eric. Hope everyone's doing good. I'll be doing a video soon on my neighbor's fishbowl bus with a 2-stroke V8. Is it the turbocharged and supercharged 2-stroke V8? There's an electric water pump on truck that is towing is no bueno. Only 55 gallons an hour max. I don't think that they want it used for that. I think for a race car it's probably fine, but they oftentimes recommend mechanical fans. Like my old clutch fan, it draws good air on blown street cars. Yep. The cooling system is one area where I would say, look, do everything that's necessary to make sure that you have cooling. The 2005 Plus trucks have a dual electric fan, and that's one area where I would have no problem going to a wrecking yard and deferring to the OEMs on that. And maybe the aftermarket stuff is there too. I don't know, but the OEM stuff I would definitely use. .323 gears, so you get that good freeway mileage, right? Clutch fan swapping to an electric fan will not yield the same power on all vehicles. No, because all fans are not the same. It's not a universal thing. But you didn't get any gain when you went to a 5.3? Bolster the cooling system with additional coolers. Change to fans on the heat exchangers. Scrolling. As Shadow Op, so it had a 4.8, now it's a 5.7. That's going to be a significant difference in torque. Does the clutch fan push a lot of hot air off the side of the block and it is significant? Yeah, all the air that it draws through the shroud, because it should be, all the fans should be shrouded. If it's not shrouded, it's not working very well. So it needs to have a shroud on it because that's critical, so that it draws air, all of its air, not from outside. It has to draw it through the radiator for it to be efficient, and that's what the shrouding does. And then the exit air goes toward the motor. This guy on TikTok with 2,000 plus horsepower semi, and he runs 4 electric fans instead of a clutch fan. He hauls cattle with it. Yeah, I think you can get the cooling. Obviously, if the factory is using electric fans for their heavy duty applications, then it can be scienced out and it can be done. Dylan, you're hitting the shawarma. That's it. That's Avengers approved. I like the idea of electric fans in a performance vehicle, so I can disable the power draw at wide open throttle. I agree that, and the same thing with the electric water pump. Scrolling. After the last video, I want a low buck truck cam and a 408 stroker, a 408 stroker kit. The test that I did with the 408, when I ran the stock cam and then the little 206 cam and then the other performance cams, the cam out of all of those that I like the best, that I was most excited about the results, is the small 206 cam on the 408. Not that I might choose that, especially not with Airflow Research 245 heads and a fast manifold and all that, because there'd be no reason to have that stuff on there if you had a 206 cam. Yeah, it's going to make more power like that. But if you have a 206 cam and a 408, you don't really need that stuff. But that combination did very well. It did surprisingly well. And that's why I like testing weird stuff, because sometimes it works out really well. Shadow Alps like an old turbo 400 3-speed, 7,000 RPM, high gear, direct B, 140 160 wheel speeds. On my Mustang with a 308 gear and the T5, which was 1-to-1, and the stock size tire, I think we ended up putting 17s on it, maybe. I think it was the same tire size. It would be 140 at like 6,000. I had the Messier inline water pump on my LS 911 and fed a 4-inch thick Ron Davis radiator, and I couldn't overheat the car. The Messier pump worked good. Oh, good. Radiator up front and the pump mounted in the rear. That's a long travel. A lot of the drift cars are like that too. A lot of times they have helper pumps. I remember someone telling me to delete the clutch fan off my 04 Civic for more power. You had a clutch fan on your Civic? How did it have that? How did it have that on a front-wheel drive car? You had to unshroud the dual 10-inch fans on the small block Chevy S10 to get it to maintain temperature. You had to unshroud them? You got rid of the shrouds? Anyone know the RPO code for a 2004 truck 6-liter? Also, what cylinder heads that it came with? Jeremy, take a look at Summit Racing, the on all cylinder stuff. They have all of the VIN number ID stuff. You put the E-fan setup on a semi. A semi would definitely be an application where you're running hot a lot, especially going up hills. Run electric fans on everything. Look into some OEM 18-wheeler air-to-air intercooler data. The majority of heat exchange happened in the first 1 to 2 inches of the cooler. Past that, a thicker air-to-air was just a heat sink. So it's all happening at the first part. You can feel that when you make a boosted run. You can feel the temperature gradient across the intercooler core. Have you done advancing stock? Advancing the cam? I don't think I've ever run a stock HO cam. Advancing it 2 degrees until the engine fails. Well, how are you going to get an engine failure? Are you going to get into like piston to valve issue or something? Had success using a large oil cooler to lower the water temps. I was told that oil can be 30% of total engine heat. Helped a lot of towing. Yeah, if you have an oil temperature gauge, it's a good idea to look at that relative to water temperature. Through land speed record, not in the Mustang. That was a standard. That was an optional gearing. The stock one had a 273. Mine was a 308, so it was the performance rear end in my car. What was the horsepower on what? On my Mustang? The Mustang was stock when it went 140. The alternator adds a pretty serious load, so it's going to rob power. Toronto's in the house. Stock block and stock heads. Civic didn't have one. The person was a bit of a know-it-all. Were they working out of AutoZone? I did delete the AC and power steering because they didn't work. We've done that. And then I've also run we did them mostly for dyno testing, but I think we did run some on the Del Sol when I was road racing it. We did we replaced the damper, which I don't think is a good idea on the 4-cylinder with the little aluminum one. It makes power, but I just don't know how long it's going to last like that. Just watched the part of the 408 vid you just mentioned and the 206 cam. That's a good truck setup right there. It is. It's way more motor than you would need or anyone would build for that application, because you wouldn't put those heads on it, and probably not a vast manifold like a Trailblazer SS and like Enforcer heads on that 408 with that camshaft would probably be good. Richard, the stock electric fans, there is a separate spot on the fuse panel that's hidden from user access. You need to lift the panel to find the fuse and relays for 2005 and a half. Mine is a 2002. Had a custom radiator mount and shroud built for the 4-core aluminum radiator. Okay, that makes sense. I thought that you were saying that you had a shroud on the fan, a dedicated shroud for the fan, and then you got rid of the shroud, and then it worked better like that. Because I've never seen that happen. I'll take note of that. Need a good truck setup. Are you not a fan of LSA superchargers? I'm a fan of every form of boost. So much easier to bolt on without the issue of turbo plumbing and everything else needed for a turbo setup. I'm not of the mind that one thing is better than the other, because they do different things and they have different pluses and different minuses. I like superchargers, have tested lots of them and done lots of testing with them. Have had lots of supercharged vehicles that I've owned. And the LSA is good. I've never run one because I've never been able to afford one. Oh, Shadow Ops, Rich, I was saying if you went to the factory route with electric fans. But is my wiring harness even going to have that? That was my point. Being an O2, is it going to even have this top secret 05 and up only switching mechanism? How much does an alternator take? How much does an alternator take at full load? How much power does it draw? I didn't do that. We ran the alternator and then we got rid of it, but I didn't have it loaded. All diesels have huge mechanical fans. Helps a lot pulling air through the intercooler and radiator. I remember we took a bus. My son's soccer team and all the parents took a bus to Reno or somewhere. We went to we went to a match there, and the bus that we were on overheated. It broke down. So they went and opened the back of it. And I've never looked in the back of the bus. So I'm back there. I'm like, oh, yeah, look at that. It has a power takeoff for the fan. I said, and it's broke. And they're like, and all the other parents are like, especially one of the guys that was a mechanic. He goes, how do you know that? I said, well, do you know what I do for a living? They're like, no, we thought you were like a banker or something. I'm like, no, that's not me. I said, I'm a car guy. I said, I said, the belt's off the PTO. I said, if we had another belt, we might be able to make that work. I said, but it just broke the belt. So it's not driving the fan. So it's not drawing air in there and it's overheating. It's just a radiator problem. And they're like, yeah, that's right. So somebody brought another bus and we all loaded onto the other bus and took off. So looking for a bin and a VDX for a Vortec PCM with a 4.3 liter turbo, if anyone has any sources. Researching 18-wheeler intercoolers. The one that we used to use a lot was the Ford. One of the Ford turbo diesels you used to be able to go buy from the dealership, and it was like $200 or $300. And we used to use that for a lot of stuff. Shadow Op. So I don't have that secret access. I don't have the entrance to the Batcave. Yes, Richard, we had to limit the shrouding on a custom mount / shroud to get the truck to stay cool at 180. It was a strange one. I've never heard of that. Ralph, I still have no idea what you're trying to say. I wish that you would just ask a question if you have a question. The 2001 GMC C6 6-liter 7875 for all 80 has new factory fans with electric harness. ECM needs to be tuned. You can get E-fan harnesses off an 05 in the truck. Gotta take the fuse block cover off. The fans that I got came with relays and everything, so that should be pretty easy to hook up. Church Bus Summer. You know what I was thinking of was what is the movie where the thing comes out of the field and always gets the kids in the bus. And they made a sequel, and it's like a big flying thing. It's like a dude. It's real scary looking. Hey, dogs! That's enough. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's a really good horror movie. Jeepers Creepers. There we go. That's what I was thinking of. I like those movies. Shadow Ops 8.1496 is unique. Hybrid big block and LS. All you have to do is turn E-fans on. Use the output to trigger the ground side of the fan relay. Jeepers Creepers, where'd you get those peepers? 305 trucks actually have a spot for separate harness to bolt onto and make jumper power wires. Okay. If you have a big bang motor in the future, the 3800 would probably be next, although the big block's also ready. Dan, you sent the snake video? Okay, I'm going to take a look. I don't see anything. I'm going to see if it's in my spam. Nothing in my spam. Nothing in my inbox. I got stuff from a dude asking me, are you sure you're putting the email in there correctly? There's only one E and B. Daniel, I don't see it. Finish the 6-liter Big Bang. The 6-liter, redoing the 6-liter Big Bang, since it already stands as the high water mark for all of the things I've done. That's pretty low on the list. I got other ones I want to do. I want to do the 3800. I'm still not seeing any emails. If you sent your snake video over, Daniel, check the way that you wrote Killer B16 at AOL. You messed with Japanese performance engines? Yeah, I have an RB25. I don't have an SR. I do like SR20s. They've run a bunch of those on the chassis dyno, and I like those because I'm a big fan of, like, I would love to have a 510 with one of those in there. Or when I was racing World Challenge, there was a guy that had an SER, and I love those little cars too. But yeah, I've written 3 Honda books. I had for a long time the world's fastest Honda Civic. So I raced the back there. You can't see it really. Del Sol and Touring, we won the championship in that. So I've owned lots and lots of Hondas and stuff. So yes, I speak import very well. I have a 3-cylinder Geo Metro right now and a 240Z. I'll let you know on the 4.3-liter Big Bang, my turbo setup is almost complete. So are you going to try to break it? Did you ever consider a 305 Big Bang? I don't. I mean, maybe a small block, but I don't think I would do a 305. I think that I would do, if I was going to do some sort of small block, I probably would do an L31, probably the Vortec motor. Or guys want me to do the 2nd gen LT1. My 165 wheel horsepower D16 Honda with a fully charged battery, moving the alternate belt, was 2 horsepower at 9,200 on the Dynajet. You're running your D16 to 9,200. Do you know what would happen if you put too big of a cam in an engine without a stall converter? Yes. It'll be really, really soft down low. And you could put a big enough camshaft in it where it doesn't make any power on the top either, because it never gets to the point, because it's held back by the intake manifold in the cylinder head. So you could theoretically have one that just hurts power. Need to get a 2JZ to match the RB. A 2J is bigger than the RB25 though. Here late, Gelbanks designed a fan to duplicate road conditions. It's a lot. Again, we went over all that. I love the 240Z. Right now, it doesn't have one in it. It had the original L24. We pulled that out. I'm thinking about putting the RB25 in it, but originally I put that car was used for the guys from CX Racing to do their LS swap kit from. So we're going to put an LS in it. Okay, I found out it's an LQ4 317 is. My nephew just got it for a swap into an 84 IROC. That'll wake up the IROC quite a bit. Guam, what's going on, man? Do you have a cam recommendation for a street truck with an LQ9 and 317 heads? Yes. Either one of the cams I have will work fine in that, especially if it's a daily driver kind of thing. Well, Bob, it's always good to have a spare 4.3 liter then, right? Just in case you break one from testing. What's my LQ4 with a truck Norris cam on 14 pounds going to make? $460. I'm thinking somewhere in the 900. About a 1JZ. I would be more interested in doing that. I would like to go get, because I see those in, in a Lexus, those kinds of things in the wrecking yard. I've seen a few of those. There's possibility of a Big Bang 305 coming from me on the chassis dyno at some point. I forgot, Katie, what heads do you have on that thing? Have you ever heard of a cam making it where it stalls in reverse? Yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with the cam. That has something to do with the tune. What's a 240Z triple carb straight 6-way? Probably about as much as an aluminum headed small block weighs. I have 2 engines for everything. Always build 2 at a time. That way you have a spare. Do you like the CX Racing swap kit? Any downsides to the CX swap? I've never used it. I just let them use the car up there. I had a buddy of mine that was working up there, and he said, "Can we use your Z for this swap kit?" And I said, "Yes, you can." So I just let them use it. I've never tried one or put it in anything. Bo, what motor did you have? Because the heads that you have will work fine. An 862 or 706 head is going to be a good upgrade from a 317 head, especially if it's NA. Bone Stock 91 Firebird TPI engine. Okay. So does it make does it have a cam in it at least? Or does it just have boost? So then it just has all the torque and not very much horsepower. So going to be a work truck. If it's an LQ9, you put 706 heads on it, it's going to be pretty high compression. I don't know that I would get that. No gap at 16 pounds with a Mega Squirt. The ones in Lexus are non-turbo GJs. Yeah, we know that. That's okay. I don't care about it being I don't want to spend 2JZ like turbo super money. That's not important to me. And especially if we were going to put pistons in it anyways, it's not going to make any difference. And the amount of power that we would want to make, we would be able to do with that motor. And they're $400 or $500 or whatever from the wrecking yard that way. I think a Nissan V8 or Japanese V8 in the 240 would be good. Yeah, there's lots of good ones. The problem with those is that there's just not a lot of aftermarket support, at least not the way that we are used to on the American stuff. A low buck rectangle port 6-liter twin GT45s and an LS9 cam, just cheap horsepower. Yeah, you can do that. That's not a cam I'd recommend, but yeah, you can do that. Twin GT45s will support a lot of power. Guessing a stage 2 truck cam for Ryan. I got too many balls in the air. There. I've installed my blow-off valve directly off the turbo, right at the intercooler inlet. Your blow-off valve should be as close to the throttle body as you can get it. It should be on the other side of the intercooler, between the intercooler and the throttle body. Because where you have it positioned close to the turbo is the pressure buildup is going to start at the closed throttle body and work its way back. If you allow it to get all the way back to the turbo before you release it, it's going to get into the turbo. So you want to release it earlier. So have the blow-off valve closer to the throttle body. Would it be best to run 317s on the LQ9? Yeah, I think so. I don't think you're hurting yourself by doing that. There are better heads, a 243, a 799. Any aftermarket head would be better. You could mill those, you could port those, you could make them better. We ran ported 317s on the motor that made 1,500 horsepower, and so you can make them work well. Have you thought of later 241 heads? The 241 heads are a little better than the 317 heads, but I would just use what you have. Get a BMW or Mercedes V8 instead of a Japanese one. Similar power potential, but much cheaper. I don't think, well, in a wrecking yard, none of those are going to be cheaper. They're all going to be exactly the same price. And I don't want to be spending BMW or Mercedes money if things go wrong, because those are not cheap to fix. Twin GT45 is going to be very sluggish with an LS9 cam. I agree. That's not a. I mean, if you want to make 1,500 horsepower, you could do it with that combination. That's not what I picked for a street combination, but. Near. I'm pulling Y control from the throttle body. My theory was slow the air through the intercooler for better contact time. I don't understand how your blow-off valve is affecting airflow through the intercooler. Well, 243 heads make more power than 706 on an LQ9 up to 6,800. You can. Are you talking about just stock ones on like a cammed LQ4? I have that video up that shows exactly what they did. The 243 head made more peak power. The 706 head made more power up to about 5,000. And then the 243 head, they flow more. Bigger valves, bigger ports and stuff. Made more power at the top. And at 6,800, they probably would make more if you have a cam and an intake manifold that's going to go up there. I have an 04 LS 6-liter out of a Tahoe. I just ordered how to build LS performance. Is there another book you'd recommend on Gen 3? Or is enough transfer to the book? Yeah, I have a Gen 3 book, but they all do the same thing. All the motors all do the same thing. If you put a camshaft in a Gen 3 or a Gen 4 motor, it does the same thing. Put heads on it, they do the same thing. Intake manifold, they do the same thing. It all interchanges. Why do people use LS9 cams? Mostly because they're cheap and people have taken them out of stuff because they've upgraded them. Why not get a cam spec for a particular combination? Well, I don't recommend that either. I don't recommend people don't need custom cams. That's 99% of the people don't need custom cams. The people that are doing dedicated specific types of racing, but nobody in a street car, nobody in a daily driver needs a specific cam, needs a custom camshaft. The fact that you can answer all these questions off the top of your head is really impressive, but I might just be making it up. Roger 240. So you have BTR Stage 3. Is it a Stage 3 truck cam or a Stage 3 turbo cam? A Stage 3 LS1 cam? A Stage 3 LS3 cam? It doesn't really matter. Like I said, the video will show you. What are you doing? Well, come see me. Come see me. Your brother comes and sees me. Oh, this is Bruno. Oh, come on. Get up here. What? Get up here. Okay, just stay down there. Stay down there, huh? You get some face rubs, huh? Oh, that's good stuff, huh? Good stuff, huh? Hello. Come on. I know what you want. I know, but I can't take you right now. But we will. We'll go in a little bit, okay? I know. I get it. I know. I know where you want to go. I get it. I know it's been a while, huh? We need to go. We'll go after. We only have a few more minutes, and then we can go, okay? Oh, more pets. What? What? Arr, 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 arr. Bark, bark, bark. What? I know. I know. Oh. Okay. Okay, go get your brother. And I'll come talk to you in a little bit. Okay, go. Last question. Best head gasket for boosted LQ4. The ones that we use on the 1540 something horsepower Big Bang iron block motor, which was an LQ4 because it was LQ. It was an LQ4. Were the factory LS9 gaskets? Yeah, the factory supercharged gaskets were what we used. Quite honestly, if you blow the gasket, it's because you did something else. The gasket's not going to let go. Truck Norris, Chupacabra are good daily cams, but it's going to need a tune, and the truck will sway side to side from chop like a hot rod. From those cams on a 6-liter? Take the dog. Wait. I know he wants to go for a WALK. He can also spell, so I have to say that quietly. Target power 1500 horsepower from a 4-liter Barra. Would you E85 an intercooler? I would have an intercooler regardless of what fuel you use, whether it was E85 or methanol. 1500 horsepower from a 4-liter Barra is going to take a lot of RPM, and because they don't make a lot of NA power, so it's going to take a lot of RPM and a lot of boost. So I would use an intercooler, and I would use methanol. And 1500 horsepower. Is it going to be a single turbo? If it's going to be regardless of whether it's a single or twins, 1500 horsepower is going to be, it's obviously going to be sluggish. I would assume that you're doing this to go drag racing or something. Why do head manufacturers make smaller CC runner versions of heads when the larger versions always seem to perform better? I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer to that. I don't know what their thinking is. If we gauge it simply by like maximum power, maybe the bigger head works better. But one thing I don't do on the dyno is we don't check part throttle stuff. We also don't check cruise. We don't check response and drivability and that kind of stuff. And maybe the smaller head would be better for that. And also, well, I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. I think that there are some applications where I wouldn't put more cylinder head on it. Like I don't think you should take a 6-liter and put a ported LS7 head on there or a ported LS3 head on there and then put a Truck Norris cam in there or a low buck truck camshaft or this 206 cam that we're talking about. That's just a waste of time for all that extra head flow. You don't really need that. That's an instance where I probably would put less head on it. Jake's got a cone of shame. Oh, kept scratching a hot spot. That's not good. My dog is talking to me. He's now telling you to take him to a WLK. I know. Did you get the rattlesnake? I don't have any. There's nothing in my inbox and nothing in my spam. Oh, wait, maybe. I see something from Emily. Is that right? Did I get that right? On the rattlesnake video? Daniel? Is that who this is from? Because it's saying that the attachment can't be downloaded. I was looking for something from Daniel, but okay, let's see. It's in my spam. Yeah, from Dan Sullivan. It is from you, but it's saying that it can't be downloaded. Attachments can't be downloaded. Attachments emailed marked as spam may contain harmful to download. Please move it out of the spam folder. Okay. We're going to restore that to inbox. We're going to go to our inbox. Okay, now we're going to look. We have downloaded. Hopefully it's not something bad. Where was this rattlesnake from? Yeah, it's not a king snake. It's a normal rattlesnake. It's just it's what we call it morphed. And so the spots that are normally on it or diamonds or whatever are just bigger. And so that's pretty normal. But you're right. I could see how people would confuse that. That's why I tell people, especially in this area, I tell them, look, if you see a snake in your yard or wherever you're seeing it, I said, look at the back of it. If it doesn't have a rattle, it's not going to be venomous. Not in this area. I mean, if some on the odd chance that somebody had a king cobra and it got away and you happened across it, that's a bad deal. But that's pretty remote because that's all that we have here. We only have rattlesnakes and we don't have anything else that's venomous. That's not that, you know, there's nothing that doesn't have a rattle on it. How much will a Gen 3 iron block handle an aftermarket crank? Has that been tested? Yes, I have big bang stuff on a Gen 3. We went to 1,480 horsepower with a stock crank. Looking at an oil pan for Holden Commodore. ASR will have a VT sump in Sydney. They can lose their rattles. I've seen them cut off. They don't. That would be very, very unusual. They can lose rattles. In fact, rattles get knocked off all the time, but almost never the end one, unless they got their tail chopped off. That's pretty remote. The US probably has the equivalent of a 3800 V6. One more minute. I never even did a poll, right? Dang. What was I thinking? That's why you can't tell. The rattles being knocked off is pretty common. They get caught in between rocks and they get hit and stuff. And sometimes birds peck at them. And rattlesnakes don't like it when you grab them by the rattle. They get fairly feisty. But a lot of people think that the rattles dictate how old the snake is, that they shed once a year and that each one of those is a year. So if you see a rattlesnake that has 8 rattles, then it's 8 years old. That's not the case. A rattle happens every time that they shed. They can shed multiple times a year. The number of times that they shed is in direct relation to how well they're eating, actually, how big their body is growing. So their body grows and they need to shed. And so that can happen, like I said, it can happen multiple times a year. Sometimes it happens multiple times a year and then one time a year and then not. And so that's not a good gauge. So it's a common snake. It's a Southern Pacific. It came from Yuba County, Dobbins, 1900 foot. Yeah, let's see. What state is that in? Is that like Yuba City? Is that in that area? It's in California. Snake has 9 rattles. Yeah, that's not unusual. We've found snakes that have lots of rattles, and they're not even, they're not even gigantic or anything. They've found snakes, particularly rattlesnakes, up to 10,000 feet. So there's high altitude stuff too. I don't know if they're doing high altitude training. I don't know how they're surviving being that cold. They definitely have to be going underground when it's wintertime. Okay. What state are you in, Daniel? Because if you're back east, it could be, they have different kinds of rattlesnakes, timber rattlesnakes. There's a Pennsylvania one, which I've never seen before. Black timber rattlers. New York timber rattler. All the timber family. Masagua. Eastern diamondback. Northern California. Okay, I was thinking that it was Yuba City area. South Yuba River Citizens League. The rattlesnakes that we have in Northern California are the most common is going to be a Western or Northern Pacific. There are some others, but those would be the most common. Northern Pacific, yeah, and Northern Pacific's all other snakes in the Bay Area are harmless. And you can have northern rattlesnakes in Northern California. So here's one that's black and white, like the one that you're looking at. The cool thing about these is that there's a bunch of different colorations. I've seen them be even green with black spots, which they're beautiful. And when you see them like that, I've only seen a few of them, and I've only seen them over by where Lisa's parents live, which is in the Pinole area. But other ones, I actually caught a black one like yours out at our ranch, and it was the biggest one it was about 4 feet. It was the biggest one that I've ever caught out there. Rule of thumb: if it's a snake, stay away from it. See, I'm exactly the opposite. If it's a snake, I go get it. Coral snakes. Yep. Coral snakes are rear fang, so it's harder to get bit by them. And they're not super aggressive, and they're pretty timid, but I would definitely love to catch one of those. They're beautiful. We have rattlesnakes, copperheads, black racers, king snakes, corn snakes, garter snakes, water moccasins. Yeah, in Tennessee. You guys might also have Eastern diamondbacks, which would be cool. Snakes are spreading beyond the known areas. Marysville, Yuba City. Okay. Here in Oz, the red-bellied black snakes eat the eastern browns. Yeah, we have that with the king snakes and milk snakes, and even the indigo snakes will eat the rattlesnakes. And really, snakes will eat other snakes that they're bigger than. That's pretty normal. We've been getting gators in the East Tennessee rivers. Wow. Caught 3 caimans in Pigeon Forge. What are you trying to tell me? I know. Just a minute. There are diamondbacks. Yeah, the eastern diamondbacks are beautiful, and they get big too. We also have ringneck snakes on the ranch. Yeah, we catch a lot of ringnecks too, only during specific times of the year because they're they like to stay underground, and when wet outside, then they'll come out. So we see those a lot. And on that note, it is time to go. You can hear Bruno. He's saying, hey, what? Is it time? Is it time? Bark, bark. What? What? I know you'll come get me. You will. Okay. I will see you guys all tomorrow. Northern alligator lizards. Yeah, we catch a lot of alligator lizards. Not gators.